Sæl sömul og velkomin í þennan nýja þátt á broadcasti. Síðustu misseri hefur mikil umræða svokallað bakslag í réttindabaráttu hinsegin fólks átt sér stað hjá stærstu fjölmiðlum landsins. Það hefur þó borið lítið svör í hverju þetta meinta bakslag felst, nema hvað þá einna að helsta hópur samkynhneigðs fólks sem nota bene skilgreinir sig ekki sem hinsegin, foreldrar og aðstendendur barna, heilbrigðisstarfsfólk og kennarar skuli dirfast að gagnrýna þessa hreyfingu hinsegin fólks, sem í raun aðeins einn armur af stærra púsluspili ideológiskra afla úr háskólakerfinu og þeim jafnréttisiðnaði sem svo fylgir til að skapa skaðmenntuðum kynjafræðingum atvinnu. Hið opinbera, bæði ríki og sveitafélög, hafa verið mjög iðnir að ausa úr sjóðu sínum í þennan iðnað, sem sérstaklega merkilegt í ljósi þess að fólk nýtur sömu lagalegra réttinda í íslensku samfélagi. Báknið í kringu þennan iðnað tútnar út samt á ógnarhraða og nú hafa hugmyndasmiðirnir einnig búið til viðskiptamódel sem gerir þeim kleift að sækja á mjög sannfærandi hátt í peningasjóði einkafyrirtækja, auðvitað í nafni ástar og umburðarlyndis, auðvitað. Viðskiptamódelið reyndar ekki búið til á Íslandi en því hefur verið dreift á íslenska kollega hérlendis úr hinseginsmiðjum erlendis. Í þessum þáttum ætlum við að fara yfir hvernig hins svokallaða hinseginsmiðja sett saman og hvernig hún starfar og ekki síst fyrir hverja. Við munum líka fjalla íslenska áhrifavalda kynjaköldsins og fara yfir þann skandal sem byrjaður að afhjúpast víða Vesturlönd og þar Ísland engin undantekning. Markmið þáttarins að skapa umræðu, að virkja okkur öll til þess að ræða málin betur við hvort annað. Erum við að breyta rétt með að styðja óvísindalegar hugmyndir og telja börnum trú að þeir geti fæst í röngum líkama? Erum við að valda skaða með þessari meðvirkni? Hverjir að drífa áfram þessa tilraunastarfsemi á börnum og í hvaða tilgangi? Spurningarnar margar og ég hvet áhorfendur til þess að senda mér spurningar. Í hverjum þætti fáum við líka til okkar góða gesti í spjall og ég get sagt áhorfendum strax frá því að gestir þáttarins eru alls ekki að vera endanum allt frá allri flóru mannlífsins, allt frá áhyggjufullri móður á landsbyggðinni, heimsfrægir rithöfundar, grínistar, alþjóðlega virt heilbrigðisstarfsfólk, mannréttindalögfræðingar og listin ótæmandi. Þetta þáttur sem ætlar að velta steinum og gagnrýna. Velkomin í bakslagið. Á undanförnum árum hefur verið róttæk breyting á því hvernig fólk talar kyn á Íslandi og í hinum vestræna heimi. Allt í einu virðist eins og enginn getur verið sammála grundvallaratriði eins og hvað kona og hvað kyn sé í raun. Transaðgerðarsinnar í taumi kynjafræðinga hafa fengið algjörlega frjálsar hendur til þess að hringla með skilgreiningar í öllum stigum menntakerfisins. Stjórnkerfisins líka og fengið jafnvel að skrifa heilu lagafrumvörpin sem svo hafa runnið í gegnum Alþingi án nokkrar samfélagslegrar umræðu og jafnvel án vitundar okkar þjóðarinnar. Þeir sem eru svo ósammála þessu og hreyfa við andmælum og gagnrýni eru svo stimplaðir sem transfóbist hatursfólk. Síðustu ár þá hefur kynjaköldi náð að teygja anga sína víðar en í menntakerfinu og í stjórnkerfinu. Það hefur í raun náð yfiráðum í flestu mannréttindasamtökum landsins, allt frá samtökum sem einu sinni var félag homo lesbía, kvenréttindahreyfinguna, réttindafélög ýmis fatlaðs fólks og svo má lengi telja. Það sem einkennir ástandi hér á landi einkum hversu árangursrík skoðunarkúunin undanfarin ár hefur verið. Viðmælendur eru vandlega valdir og þeir sem eru á annarri skoðun fá engin tækifæri til að koma áleiðis. Ríkisútvarpið ásamt stærstu fjölmiðlablokkum landsins hefur verið notað sem áróðusmaskína fyrir hugmyndafræðingana og kerfisbundið þakkað niður alla gagnrýna umræðu málefni svokallaðs hinsegin fólks og hlutverks samtakanna 78 þar á lútandi. Í slíkri gagnrýni felst meðal annars efasemdir boðskap kynjafræðinga sem boða kenningar sem eru kallaðar staðreyndir og mynda hornstein í stefnu íslenska menntakerfisins en eru gjörsamlega óvísindalegar og miklu frekar ósannaðar tilgátur en vel rannsökuð viðfangsefni. Gagnrýnin beinist einnig að klámvæðingu í grunn- og framhaldsskólum landsins sem miðar að því að ná til barna og ungmenna og gera þau óörugg sjálf sig enda þurfið þau þá í kjölfarið á aðstoð sérfræðingana að halda. Nú unni fast að því að hreinsa út úr kennarastéttinu þá fáu kennara sem styðja sig við líffræðina og eru meðvitaðir þá staðrænd að samkynhneigt fólk á einhvers konar rófi á erfitt með að fóta sig á breytingaskeiði unglingsárana og því viðkvæmt fyrir allskyns áhrifum sem boða lausnir. Úr háskólasamfélaginu heyri svo ekkert og blaðamenn leggja ekki í opinskáa umræðu. Þetta hefur valdið því að við erum komin á stað þar sem íslenskt samfélag í raun orða dystopískri martröð eða stefnir að byrja þangað. Fólk sem svo voga sér inn í umræðuna gegn þessu svo kerfisbundi tekið niður, brennt á hinu stafræna báli internetsins. Að því sögðu, þá kynni ég fyrsta gest minn hér í bakslaginu og sá ekki að vera endanum. Graham Linehan írskur gamanmyndahöfundur og lætur sig jafnréttismál mikið varða og þá sérstaklega réttindi kvenna, barna og samkynhneigðra. Hann meðhöfundur gamanmyndaþáttunum Father Ted, Black Books og The IT Crowd sem eflaust fólki kunnugt og hann hefur einnig skrifað fyrir Count Arthur Strong, Brass Eye og The Fast Show. Snemma á ferlinum gekk hann í samstarf við rithöfundinn Arthur Matthews. Graham hefur unnið til 5 BAFTA-verðlauna sem eru bresku kvikmynda- og sjónvarpsverðlaunin og þar á meðal sem besti rithöfundurinn í gamanmyndaflokki fyrir IT Crowd árið 2014. Eftir að hann byrjaði að tjá skoðanir sínar transferli barna og tillögur lögum kynrænt sjálfræði, þá var fjandinn laus. Aðgerðasinnar gerður allt til þess að leggja orðspor og feril hans í rúst, sem þeim tókst. Þar sem vinir, samstarfsfélagar og viðskiptaraðilar sneru algjörlega við honum baki. Þetta setti líf hans og fjölskyldu algjörlega á skorðum sem svo lauk með skilnaði hans og fyrirverandi konu hans. Í síðasta mánuði gaf Graham út bókina Tough Crowd, How I Made and Lost a Career in Comedy eða Erfiðir áhorfendur, hvernig ég öðlaðist og misti frama sem grínisti. Bókin var hernaðarleyndarmál þangað til í september til þess að draga úr líkum á skemmdarverkum á útgáfa hennar. Bókina tilengar hann fjölda fólks sem hefur haft áhrif á líf hans, þar á meðal mér, sem mér mun þykja stórkostlega vænt það sem eftir Bókina hægt að nálgast á Amazon, en spjöllum við Graham, hann gesturinn. Hello, Graham, and welcome to Bakslagið. And thank you for being my first guest in my new podcast with Broadcast, Bakslagið.
I'm very honored. Thank you very much, Elder.
You just published a book called Tough Crowd, How I Made and Lost a Career in Comedy. I was very, very lucky to get the book read to me straight from the horse's mouth by yourself on Audible on Amazon. So I had to listen to the whole book and your voice and your narration for 7 hours, and I have to say, well done. It was quite good.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm expecting to buy a copy of you in person and signed, obviously. So this is why I didn't buy a hard copy yet. So I hope you keep one for me.
I will.
Well, the book, it was quite entertaining, the book. So it's sort of an autobiography or sort of memoir that takes, well, it's quite dramatic shift in the middle of the book. So if the book starts, you know, where you take us through your childhood in Ireland, how you got into journalism and then comedy writing, and you know how your working relationship with Arthur Matthews developed, and you got into writing Father Ted, which everyone in Iceland, by the way, knows what is, believe it or not.
Yeah, good.
And actually, IT Crowd is quite well known in Iceland and all of the Nordic countries as well. I don't know that much about Black Books, so you have to forgive me there. I haven't really seen that.
But that hit in America for some reason.
Yeah, but you've had a little bit of a turbulent career over the last, well, let's say, decade now? How many?
Yeah, well, it's more like I'd say it's around 6 years. 6 years I've been fighting this nonsense. So
Tell us
yeah,
a bit. Tell us a bit what happened, because I mean, you do tell us in the book that, you know, you take us up to a point where you start noticing that something is wrong within women's rights and the safeguarding of children. Tell us a little bit what what happened. What did you do?
well,
Why were you?
before I do, I should say that like everyone's very fascinated by the latter part. But I should say that if you do like Father Ted, it is a very kind of deep dive into how it was written and how it was cast and made. So I don't want people to think that it's just going to be the subject, you know, what we talk about over the next hour, because what we're talking about over the next hour is a very specific thing that happened only to me in the last, you know, tenth of my life, you know. Actually, is that right? I don't know. I won't do the maths. But uh, but
No one
yeah,
needs to know that.
I just saw that women were being sent the most appalling abuse by faceless online accounts. And I also saw that the things these faceless online accounts were saying, which were incredibly radical, such as men being allowed into women's spaces, men cheating at women's sports, children being told that they've been born in the wrong body and they needed drugs and surgery to fix it. These things I thought were very frightening. And I thought that the way that anyone who stood up to them was being treated was even more frightening. People were having their livelihoods destroyed, being handed out of their jobs. And I just thought, well, you know, it was kind of a no-brainer that you stand up for people who are going through that type of thing, and you speak out when something something wrong is happening. But what I didn't expect was the lack of support from people in my industry, from the mainstream liberal media, the press. There was no support. In fact, the opposite. People were terrified of speaking about it. And they were allowing some of the most absurd things to go through. Like, for instance, you know, the word mother being removed from maternity advice by the Scottish government. Amnesty Ireland removing the word woman from all their communications. Most egregiously, I thought, when the abortion, when the repeal the eighth referendum was successful and abortion was introduced, they called it a great victory for pregnant people, which I thought was, yeah, which was so insulting. That, you know, I just felt, well, you know, it's a natural thing to speak up against it. And I was surprised, you know, I mean, the worst, like at its absolute core, the worst, most pertinent and urgent evil of this movement is what they're doing to children. They're telling children that they've been born in the wrong body, that they need drugs and surgery to fix it. And these drugs and surgery are shortening these kids' lives, rendering them sterile, and confusing them to such an extent that I don't know if you saw, but recently a transitioner has come out. He's just a 22-year-old man who transitioned to female and was told by doctors that he would literally turn into a biological female.
Yeah. I did see that. I believe you're talking about Brianna.
Yes, I think that's the person's name.
Yeah, it's a terrifying tale that Brianna has, and who knows, maybe I will get Brianna on this podcast at some point, because this conversation hasn't really got that far in Iceland. For many reasons. Maybe if we extend a little bit on what you said about the entertainment industry, what is keeping the entertainment industry in these shackles of silence when it comes to children transitioning and the erosion of the word woman and mother?
Well, at one point in the book, I say that, you know, Twitter is a surveillance system that we installed ourselves. You know, but it's a surveillance system that surveils us. And I think basically what's happened is that everybody, when the internet came along, everybody got very comfortable with sharing every aspect of their life, and they didn't realize that I mean, I was doing it. I was sharing jokes. I was sharing, you know, information about where I lived. I was sharing all sorts of things because I was like the beloved author of Father Ted, and I didn't have anything to fear, you know. But of course, once the internet turns against you, all the information that you voluntarily shared is then used against you and weaponized. And I think comedians and actors and all these people who are living their lives, on a sort of stage, a social media stage, are very, very vulnerable to these kinds of attacks. So, you know, everyone knows, well, if I step in and comment on this situation, then something I've said, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a throwaway joke, or what could it be? You know, anything at all could be weaponized and used against me. So people are playing it safe, and so they're silencing themselves. And so what we have is a very frightening situation where the loudest, most violent, most aggressive voices are the ones that are coming through, and they're scaring people. They scare people, you know, and it's led to.
I mean,
yeah, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a complete stranger to what's been going on in this circle when it comes to this ideology, queer theories, psychophants, and etc. So I'm sort of quite well schooled in what's going on, but there have been other people, known people, who have tried to speak out and have been speaking out. For example, J.K. Rowling. She's probably the person who has probably had the most financial damage in the number of pounds. I'm not saying like in total, but she has lost, you know, quite a lot of income. Not that she couldn't afford it, but has been, you know, vilified, and there's been repeated witch hunts against her, and well, also yourself and let's say, well, the gay media. Well, I don't even want to use the word gay media. The queer media, Pink News.
Yes, yes. 42 articles in a single week they published about her.
42 articles in a single week. That's nuts. That's like 7 articles a day.
Yeah,
that shows you. You know, I mean, I'm not being funny, but if you look, huh?
Well, sorry to cut across you, Elder, but like the more beloved you are, the harder a time you get. And the fact that J.K. Rowling kind of basically, you know, a lot of people around the same age as the people who cancelled her grew up with her books and loved them dearly and worshipped and create fan fiction about them. That's the reason why Pink News wrote 42 pieces about her in a single week, because the more beloved you are, the harder the campaign against you has to be. And I think the fact that I wrote The IT Crowd and Father Ted put me in the same kind of crosshairs, you know. But unfortunately, my work didn't make me a billionaire, so it was a lot less safe for me to do it.
It was different days when Father Ted came out, I suppose. So
yes.
Yeah, and
UK sitcom writers don't get to be billionaires.
Yeah, it is really, really strange. But when we, you know, okay, I would like to sort of talk a little bit about the consequences and stuff on of this constellation, because you described in your book that suddenly your friends just lost your phone number and didn't call you anymore. Your family life was disturbed because of this. And there was even a sentence in the book that really struck me, that when you said, the best thing that happened to me during that phase was my testicular cancer.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I'd taken the time to enjoy it more.
I mean,
Yeah.
can you expand a bit on that? Because I mean, when you say that, that means that you are in a very, very deep, dark place.
Yeah, well, the having cancer was the last time I felt in any way safe or kind of protected. You know, I was still in the arms of my family,
Yeah.
and ever since then, like for 5 or 6 years, it's been basically no, actually, it's more like, sorry, since my marriage book was 4 years, 3 years, it's been basically a series of fires breaking out that I have to kind of put out. And what I could never seem to get across to the people close to me is the nature of what I was up against. No one understood that trans activists were faking screenshots, you know,
Yeah.
and sharing them things I didn't do. They were attributing quotes to me that I didn't say. When I talk about, for instance, the founders of queer theory
Yeah.
being very let's say laissez-faire about pedophilia, that becomes, you've called all trans people pedophiles, you know,
Yeah.
and
That's what you
who
get.
could, yeah, who could blame people for distancing themselves from that? But none of it's true. It's you know, it's like it's just like a deliberate kind of cloud of pollution is following me. Like I'm Pigpen and Charlie Brown. I don't know if you remember Pigpen, who always had a cloud
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
dirt around him. And people don't want to come near me because they think they'll be infected by it. But what I was trying to get across to people, my colleagues, my friends, and everybody I communicated with about this, was that if people just stood together, they would lose their power. If people, if you know what my, for instance, colleagues on the Father Ted musical, which was cancelled because of all this, should have said was, of course, women deserve single-sex spaces. Of course, women deserve fair sports. Of course, children shouldn't be medically experimented on. But it was beyond, none of them could say it. None of them could say it. And I still don't quite, I'm still kind of shell-shocked by the fact that none of them had the guts to stand next to me, you know? But again, what can you do? What can you do? It is what it is.
No, it is crazy that we find ourselves in situations where, you know, where we're just describing material reality with our words, and we are being vilified for it, and the only thing that we are doing is actually describing the reality that we see.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's frightening when you think of it like that. It really
yeah,
is.
and what and we, you know, expand a little bit on this, you know, with the affiliations with pedophilia, etc. Well, of course, you have never said that trans people are pedophiles, and neither have I. I mean, I know the shoes that you are in, because I've been accused of the same, that if you mention the association queer theory has with flirting with pedophilia and etc., then you are automatically branded as, you are labeling every single sycophant in the movement, if you like, you know,
Yeah.
and that's not true.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
It's not.
but it is a fact that queer theory is about, you know, sort of erasing the barriers between childhood and adulthood, between what it means to be female and what it means to be male. Some of them even reject the notion of biological sex, for Christ's sake, you know. So
Yeah.
and then it's also this uh, indoctrination of that you can't be born wrong, that you can't be born in the wrong gender, wrong sex, and you can change your body, like you mentioned in the beginning with the most recent case we know about Brianna, you know, and people are being lied to. And I can even tell you this, since we started campaigning in Iceland, now the institute, the Icelandic Education Institute, has now been reported to the police because of a book that was published last month in October 2023, written by Canadian gender ideologues called Corey Silverberg and Fiona Smith. I think the title in English is Sex and All the Rest. And in that book, this book is aimed for children age 7 till 10 years old. And they are being taught about masturbation. There's even pictures, drawn pictures of children in sexual situations. And they are also taught that they can be born in the wrong body. And this is what we have always been trying to say, both people like you and myself. It's like you can't teach these theories as they are facts to children, because that ideological grooming.
Yeah, and one's when you're kind of when your sexuality kicks in, everything else kind of falls away. You become kind of single-minded on, especially if you're a man, but certainly if you're a man, your whole kind of life revolves around sex. Meeting women, and unfortunately the internet, the availability of pornography on the internet is just a very easy kind of tap into all that stuff. So the idea that you would want to shorten childhood, that you would want to make childhood shorter and teach these practices to children who it hasn't even crossed their mind yet and a lot of these kids, they haven't even held hands with a member of the opposite sex or a member of their sex, so it's like why are they trying to hurry this process along? And the reason I think they're trying to hurry it along is that they're recruiting. This is a recruitment drive. They try and get kids young, so that the kids will become the next generation of activists and kind of queer theory followers. Very true thing. They said trans kids aren't born, they're recruited. And, what better way to create a trans kid than to get them young when they're just learning about this stuff, to introduce them to sex, which before you develop a sexuality can be quite a frightening and disturbing thing, and start getting them to think along the lines that you want to get them to start thinking along.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It is quite interesting as well. It is quite interesting as well, Graham, that quite often, very often these people are the educators of our children who are actually doing this recruitment. And that's not only in Iceland, that's also in the UK.
Yeah, it's so disturbing the way teachers are going for this stuff. That's a real red flag, and the fact they're keeping their kids' trans identities secret from parents, that alone, it shows you that this movement needs to be completely destroyed. And I've been reading Eric Hoffer. I don't know if you know him. He was an American intellectual, kind of self-taught intellectual, who wrote a book called The True Believer, which is about how he looked at the commonalities between various different mass movements, like from Christianity to Nazism.
No.
He pointed out that one of the first things he says there's two stages to one of these movements. The first is the dynamic stage, and you might also call that the recruiting stage, when they are like everything is in flux and they are trying to world that they've promised. And in the dynamic stage, one of the main factors, and this comes from, this was in Christianity as well as Nazism and communism, one of the main factors is to destroy the family. If the family is destroyed and people are alienated, then the people inside those families that used to have a cohesion and this unity are now, targets for people who will plant certain ideas in their heads. Funnily enough, once then the movement moves out of the dynamic stage, it starts obsessing about the family again, because it tries to bring people together under this kind of whatever umbrella they've put over it. But that's what we're going through at the moment. We're going through a concerted effort to alienate children from their parents, brothers and sisters. It is a deliberate attempt to create division and confusion. And as I say, the confused and divided people will be much more susceptible to, the kind of thing that's going on. I don't want to get into it, obviously, because it's a fraught subject, but the way that the kind of anti-Semitism has, flourished in the last few weeks is a good sign of what I'm talking about. I mean,
this is a thing, Graham. We are in a culture where we all seem to be feeding on received opinions.
Yeah. It's like people. I saw an interview with two people today who were at a Palestinian march, and they actually didn't know about the October 7 attacks. They were befuddled when they were brought up. And so what it seems to be is that, and this is something I've been warning about for years, is that the lack of trust in our media, in our institutions. If you see on television a clear man like Eddie Izzard or someone like that, and the people talking about him are using she, her pronouns, then you will be given to distrust everything you hear from them. So there has been, in a funny way, a queering of the news media, and this queering of the news media means that nothing can be trusted. No one knows what to believe, and people will believe their mate who lives down the road, who they follow on Twitter, or someone who lives across the world who they follow on Twitter, sooner than they will believe a reputable media organization. And it's because these media organizations have been corrupted.
Well, this is the thing. This ideology that has been taken over our universities now over the last few decades now, and what we are seeing the ideology now spread into the civil service, into education, and into media. And that's just the fact of it. And it will take years and years to sort of change this. And the thing is, the only thing that I don't know whether you heard Konstantin Kissin's speech at the Ark here the other day, because the legacy media is completely failing the public and is actually sort of becoming the enemy of the people in many ways. So the most important thing that we can do now, people like me and my colleagues, etc., at Broadcast and other what shall we call us, new media companies, is we need to build up new media companies. Everything is so broken that we need to build new and build it better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that, I mean, it's so chaotic at the moment that I just think that the ground is very fertile for a quote unquote strong man. You know what I mean?
Yes.
A leader who will say, some of the things we've been saying, some other things. He will gather in all this. He'll basically be saying to people, aren't you sick of being lied to? I'm going to tell you the truth. And as soon as someone does that, everyone will follow that person. And we better hope that he's a nice guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm there.
That thought has struck me. That's, for example, that's the name of my show here, Backslide, which means the backlash. And the reason why I've named the show like that is because you have these gender ideologues, these sycophants of this queer movement, saying, "Oh, the backlash." But like with everything else, they can't define anything. They can't define what trans is. They can't define what queer is. They can't define what the backlash is. What does it mean? But the thing is, they think that criticism is the backlash. So, okay, I'm criticizing it. So yeah, it's a backlash. But the thing is, the real backlash is very likely to come. And especially if that man that everyone will follow is going
Yes.
to be homophobic and is going to have, you know, if we get blamed, if the gay movement gets blamed for this, we're fucked.
Yeah, yeah, and
You know,
it's like,
and the first ones to be thrown onto the bus are likely to be gay men, and then lesbians, and then onwards. You know, because
yes,
the men in dresses, they can just change their clothing. You
and walk
know,
away, and walk
and
away,
walk away.
and LGBT people will be left with the bill. Yeah,
We will
it's
be left with the bill, and that's the thing. And this is what I don't understand, and this is what I'm trying to understand as well. So maybe what happened to the gay movement? Because if you think about, you know, over the last decade of last century was amazing, and because we got so many rights, you know, we got the rights to live without discrimination, persecution. And then in the beginning of this century, we got equal marriage. And after that, things have just been going tits up.
yeah, yeah. I think, well, I mean,
You
you
know,
know,
and when we have the most rights, now the governments are suddenly, you know, pushing the most money into the movement. And it's like, what are you doing? Why? We
yeah,
needed that
yeah.
money 50 years ago. You know, we don't need it now.
Well, I think money is the key thing. You have all these NGOs like Stonewall,
Mm.
who you know, they their mission was complete, but they have to justify their six-figure salaries. So they looked for a new battle, and the battle they found was almost perfect in a way, because like, to say that some men or women and lesbians should sleep with them the way that Nancy Kelly did when she called Nancy Kelly, who was the CEO of Stonewall, and she called lesbians sexual racists.
Yeah, it's
Like,
shocking.
yeah, it's so shocking, and what it does is it creates within the gay community what you might call eternal war, because obviously lesbians will never accept this, you know, neither should they, and gay men will not accept women in their dating pool, and neither should they. But the drive to call these positions bigoted has been so successful that it's created an internal war that's going to go on forever. And if it's going to go on forever, it means that these Stonewall CEOs can go on picking up really fat checks, you know? So it's a terrible, I mean, you know, I'm not even sure that the people who did it, the people behind it, I'm not even sure they did it deliberately. You know, I think it's just some of it is just a kind of you know, I think some of them really do think they're on the right road. I think some of them are out for the money, but overall, the combination of all these different people with all these different motives has created a juggernaut, and it's a very,
Yeah.
very good example of an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, because these people won't stop, and gay people won't give up their, you know, their rights to same-sex attraction.
No, of course not. And there's nothing fluid about homosexuality. I mean,
Yeah, or
and these
heterosexuality, you
or
know.
heterosexuality for that matter. I mean, these terms mean something, you know. And well, 20 years ago, being trans meant something too. It meant to be transsexual, that you were one of those exceptionally few individuals who had been suffering gender dysphoria and needed to transition. And we should have a handful of these people, right?
Mm,
And not hundreds and thousands of them. But
mm.
now everyone is trans, because everyone, you know, you can't just say, hey, I'm trans, and then that it's like welcome to the cult, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. There
so
was an old Woody Allen joke he used to say. He used to say, what did he say? He said, I wish I was bisexual because it would effectively double my chance for a date, you know? And
yeah.
bisexuality is being held up as some sort of, like, even I saw Peter Tatchell saying this. He said something like, in the future, everyone will be bisexual. And he was delighted about this, you know?
I
And
mean, honestly,
it's,
it's possible to make a whole program about what that man has been saying, and it's actually quite shocking that he gets platformed still.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely. it's all about
being
again.
absolute non-apologist, and I have no quarrel saying it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
I
And
have no quarrel saying it.
he has been like, but like that's the kind of idea that trans activists are trying to push, that everyone is fluid and everyone can have sex with anyone, and sexual attraction doesn't actually exist, and being attracted on the basis of someone's sex is somehow perverted. I mean, you've often heard the abuse that some gay people get thrown at some gay people. You're obsessed with genitals,
Yeah.
and it's all basically a kind of half-baked homophobia that
This is what piqued me, and I will talk about this term with my viewers. This is what piqued me, piqued trans me was when I was accused of genitalia fetish, and that my whole sexual orientation was watered down to genitals, and it's just simply not true. There's so many other different factors that you can't change that well, not in my case. If it's changeable, then you're bisexual. That's these words mean something. They are not there's no elasticity here. They mean something,
but that's why we have to protect the word woman as strongly as we do, because when there's a few words in our language that are in our respective languages that are one might call them central words. Man and woman are about as central as you can get, are fundamental
and mother
words
and father, mother and father, woman and a man.
Mother and father, all these words are absolutely fundamental. So when you degrade the meaning of a word like woman, then everything is up for grabs. Gay, straight, everything is up for grabs. And this confusion, this kind of blending of categories is only useful to bad people. Only bad people are enabled by that kind of confusion. So what we have in the kind of confusion that has arisen up over the last few years is a boom time for con men, for predators, for rapists, for sex offenders. These men are taking advantage of this confusion and will continue to do so until we say, no, I'm sorry, woman means woman. Man means
exactly.
man.
On that note, Graham, I would really like to tell you that we have some incredibly, I don't know, I think we have to just use the word either evil or ignorant people by this point. We have now before Parliament a bill to change, because we have self ID already, which is a big mistake, and that needs to be repealed as soon as there's a political majority to do so. And now these sycophants of this movement, who actually have a few seats in the parliament in Iceland, are asking to change the law of the self-ID law, that you can change your gender registration annually instead of once in your lifetime. So you can change it annually, and you can have a different passport as well. So if you have a incorrect biological sex marker in your passport, you can have both. So you can have a passport with a name and a sex marker, and then you can have a different one. Can you imagine the fraud opportunities you're opening up for a person having two different IDs? You're literally being two different people. I mean, maybe not in Iceland, but I'm talking about abroad. Nobody would take Icelandic passports seriously anymore. If you know about people having you can have two passports, you can be male in one and female in the other, or even gender neutral. It's like these people have no idea what kind of consequences.
How do they get into power? How do these lunatics get into power?
it's not, well, they didn't get into power for being clever. That's for one. That
Yeah.
can't be,
Yeah. But
and
as you
it's
say,
just,
I think reality will always win in the end, but
yeah,
unfortunately, in the meantime, there's lots of things that can happen. Like, I think they had to give up on the census here this year because there were so many bogus answers because of their stupid questions about gender.
yeah,
It's going to create a few uh, problems until I guess someone works up the courage to say, "Hang on a sec, why are we even doing this?"
yeah,
It's such a like one thing I've always wonder about this, like the way they say, "Oh, let's make sure no one says the word mother because it's offensive to."
yeah,
Who decides these things? I don't see trans men clamoring to change the word mother. There's the odd activist who kind of
yeah.
appears on TV. Over here, we have Freddie McConnell, who appears on TV every single time this debate comes up. But who is he speaking for? I think the vast majority of even trans identified people do not want to see words like mother removed. And agree that it's confusing, and agree that it's better to have clarity in medical contexts. So, who is it's usually people who are, as far as I can see, who are not trans, who are not
Yeah.
even gay, who are pushing this stuff.
Absolutely. This is the thing, Graham. Last month we had sort of our first march for protecting children and preventing ideological indoctrinations in school, and we got counter protested by trans activists in Reykjavik. It's the first time they come out to counter protest, and it was actually quite educational to see them, because what I saw was a plethora of comorbidities,
Mm.
and it was a huge eye opener for me. Luckily, most of these activists were not masked, so you could easily see who they were. And I just thought to myself, my goodness, these people are in serious. There's serious, deep rooted, serious problems,
Mm.
which has nothing to do with gender identity. We're
Yeah.
talking about autism, we're talking about, neurodivergent, we're talking about even, even learning disabilities,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it
Absolutely.
sort of made me, it made
Misfits.
me think, these ideologues are really attacking the most vulnerable,
Yeah. Yeah.
and,
Absolutely.
and that seems
Absolutely.
to be what is happening. The most vulnerable children seems to be sucked into this. And
Well,
that is something
again,
that needs to be looked at.
yes, absolutely. Again, I recommend the Eric Hoffer book. He has a whole chapter about the kind of people who are attracted to these movements. And one of his chapters is misfits, people who have
Yeah.
never felt they fit in, people who have been alienated from their friendship groups, from their families.
Yeah.
They have been given by this ideology a kind of a phantom family to join,
A little bit of purpose, a little bit of belonging,
Yes, yes.
and
Which
and and
and in the old days, I mean, like I don't want to sound like Grandpa Joe here, but like in the old days, these misfits found tribes within other groups like music, pop group, following pop groups, the goth scene, the emo scene, all these kind of scenes gave people a kind of a sense of belonging and purpose. And
yeah,
unfortunately, with the arrival of the internet and the destruction of the music industry and the kind of atomization of fandom, these kinds of movements have disappeared. And in their place is this horrible zombie youth culture that isn't attached to any kind of popular star like a Bowie figure, but instead attached to unreadable American academics like Judith Butler,
yeah. Oh my
So,
goodness, yeah,
yeah. So it's really frightening that, like, the natural urge for kids, especially kids who are outcasts, to find their tribe and join together has been corrupted by this movement, you know? And I worry about these kids because, you know, having a tattoo that, you know, of My Chemical Romance is not as damaging as putting your breasts off, you know?
No, and the thing is in all of this, you know, I've met three types of parents caught up in all of this. You have, unfortunately, the psychopath, psychopaths,
Yes,
uh, and the ideologues. Very often, unfortunately, lesbian women in many cases seems to be. I don't
really.
know why lesbian women seem to very often have these trans children, but there is something there. I don't know what it is. I know it's a very sensitive topic, but
Mhm.
then you have two sets of heterosexual types of parents, and one of them being those who are being threatened with parental alienation by the child
Yes,
and by
yes,
the people around the child. So they say, if you don't go along with this, I will just find myself another family.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and I've had people who have actually said to me, Elder, I didn't know what to do. My daughter has had a double mastectomy, blah blah blah. But the thing is, it was either that or we would be estranged, and we
yeah,
didn't want to be estranged. And then you have the people who are absolutely distraught
mm,
and you know who do not want this to happen to their child and are trying to prevent it, getting alienated in many cases. And it's really heartbreaking to see this is destroying families, and very often, you know, the families are getting help being destroyed by lunatics on TikTok like Jeffrey Marsh and others,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Well, again,
And
it's like, you know, Jeffrey Marsh's
he should be
position
in
in,
prison.
yeah, I agree. I agree. His position in life is improved if he kind of attracts a legion of young people onto his side. So it's recruiting. He's always recruiting, you know. And yeah, I think it's evil what he's doing and the false promises he's giving to kids. But you know, one can only fight it as best you can, you know.
No,
I really,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Well, I think we're gonna round this up, but people can get your book on Amazon,
yeah.
both on Audible, and buy it there. Do you know whether it's gonna be in any Icelandic bookshops?
I don't know. I mean, do you mean the translation? I'm not sure what
No,
the.
no,
I'm not sure what
on the English
the
version.
actual book. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully, I'll look into it. I'll look into
Yeah,
it. But
but anyways, they can buy it on Amazon. I heard, well, you said in the book that you that Simon Edge helped you
yes,
with
he's
the
my
book.
editor. He's my editor.
Yeah,
Yeah, my long-suffering
this
editor.
one,
Yes,
it's
yes.
brilliant.
It's very
So
good. It's a
I
parody of
would
Stonewall.
I would like to tell people about, you know, that they have to buy this one. It's called The End of the World is Flat, and it has a little bit to do a little bit with what we're doing. You know, it's a satire, but if you tie the knots and if you understand the gay movement, etc., then you will be able to connect the dots. But it's very funny, so I really recommend that. The End of the World is Flat by Simon
Okay.
Edge. And obviously, thank you, Graham, for coming. The book is absolutely wonderful. Congratulations, and
Thanks,
I
Elder.
hope you will be writing more books because it was quite entertaining, and I liked the journey, especially in the first half. It was very lovely, and
Good.
great tips for young people who want to get into comedy as well.
Good. Good. I'm glad you think so. That's kind
Yeah.
of something
So
that does
if
get
you
forgotten.
so tell your young ones that want to go into comedy to get the book because there are some really valuable tips in there.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Graham.
Lovely to talk to you, Elder. See you next time.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Svona í tilefni fyrsta þáttarins þá höfum við þetta létt og laggott í dag. Í þessum hluta þáttarins mun ég teikna upp og byggja fyrir ykkur hérna íslensku hinsegin smiðu. Það sem sagt netverk hagsmunafélaga að ýmsum toga ríkistofnanir, embætti, sveitafélög, einkafyrirtæki og fleiri. En við verðum að byrja eitthvað staðar. Það kannski frekar augljóst að við verðum að byrja á samtökunum 78. Samtökin 78 voru stofnuð af Herði Torfasyni árið 1978. Nafn félagsins varð til vegna þess að það mátti ekki heita félag homo og lesbía. Þessi orð þóttu bara alls ekki sæmandi. Þannig að þá var farið að fordæmi Dana sem stofnuði sitt félag árið 1948 og nefndi það eftir árinu sem það var stofnað. Samtökin 78 byrjuði sem lítill og afar fámennur hópur en meðlimafjöldinn hann óx svo jaft og þétt í takt við þróun réttindabaráttu samkynhneigðra. Félagið var hornsteinn samfélags homo og lesbía meira eða minna allt þangað til að ein hjúskaparlög tóku gildi á Íslandi árið 2010. Árið 2015 þá fór hins vegar að bera á nýjum áherslum hjá félaginu sem var í tilvistakrísu eftir að ein hjúskaparlög tóku gildi. Hinsegin fræðingar og kynjafræðideildunum fóru að láta á sig kræla og tóku yfir félagið og líka framkvæmdastjórn félagsins. Hinsegin fræðingar hafa það markmið að gera mörkin á milli kynhneigðar og blætis, bernsku og fullorðinsára og kynjanna sjálfra óljós. Í kjölfari á þessari yfirtöku var fókusinn settur á áhugamál kynjafræðingarna hvað kyn sé, afmá þessi mörk sem við vitum að eru til og sem við þurfum til þess að geta skilgreint. BDSM var endurskilgreint sem kynhneigð og fékk því greiða leið inn í fræðsluefni samtakana 78 og síðar inn í skóla barnan okkar. Transbarni var svo allt í einu kynnt til leiks og gert að miðpunkti allstarf samtakana 78. Í síðustu árskýrslu samtakana 78 kom orðið lesbía einungis fyrir einu sinni og samkynhneigð í 8 tilvikum. Trans og börn voru hins vegar nefnd í skýrslunni yfir 100 sinnum. Skýrslan taldi 80 síður þannig að þetta vera augljóst hvar fókus félagsins liggur. Samtökin 78 er fyrsti hlutinn í hinseginsmiðinni. Fyrsti áhrifavaldurinn sem við kynnum til leiks er akademiskur aktivisti. Hann er doktor í menntavísindum með áherslu á, you guessed it, kynjafræði. Hann var áður verkefnastjóri Jafnréttisskóla Reykjavíkur. Árið 2015 þá tók hann við stöðu framkvæmdastjóra samtakana 78 og var því í lykilhlutverki að færa samtökin á þá braut sem þau hafa rutt síðustu árin. Allt frá innkauku BDSM samtakana, breyttar áherslur í svokölluðum transmálaflokki og breytt samtökunum úr því að vera miðpunktur félagslíf samkynhneigðra í að vera eins konar barnaheimili, félagsmiðstöð og innrætingastöð fyrir svokölluð transbörn. Þessi áhrifavaldur hefur verið í feminískum aktivisma í yfir 20 ár og er einn af höfundum fræðsluvefs samtakana 78, hinsegin frá Ö til A. Fyrsti áhrifavaldur kynjaköltsins er doktor Auður Magdís Auðardóttir. Jæja, góðir hálsar, þá er komið að leiðarlokum hjá okkur í dag. Ég vona að þið hafi haft smá gagn og gaman af þessu. Ég þakka samfylgdina og munið að ef við hættum að geta lýst raunveruleikunum, þá getum við heldur ekki staðið vörð áunninn réttindi okkar. Verið þið sæl.